NVIDIA shatters the x86 processor monopoly by launching a custom ARM superchip designed specifically for local AI agents. Anthropic files confidentially for a historic $900 billion IPO. And Senator Bernie Sanders introduces a bill to tax 50% of tech monopolies to fund an American sovereign wealth fund. Welcome to the Daily Rundown for Monday, June 1st, 2026. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today's briefing is exclusively brought to you by Area, the premier platform accelerating enterprise operational intelligence. As cloud costs reach a breaking point, Area provides organizations with the governance required to scale agentic workflows securely and efficiently. The compute landscape has shifted beneath our feet. NVIDIA has used the Computex Expo in Taiwan to declare that it is no longer just a graphics or cloud accelerator business. By introducing the RTX Spark PC Superchip and the Vera CPU, NVIDIA has built hardware explicitly optimized for autonomous agents, completing tool use and code generation tasks nearly 2 times faster than traditional processors. This hardware architecture underpins Microsoft's newly unveiled Surface Laptop Ultra, engineered to process massive 120 billion parameter models directly on your desk, bypassing cloud deficits entirely. But the real tremors are hitting the public financial boards. Anthropic has confidentially filed for its public debut, commanding an eye-popping $900 billion private market valuation that slips past OpenAI's $730 billion cap. Before we unravel the data, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you are listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your network. To ensure you never miss our daily forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DJOMGA Mind channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the most effective way to help us scale this independent research. Let's decode the architecture.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, JamgaMind offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
Imagine you have spent, the last 10 years moving your entire life and your entire business completely into the cloud.
Right, because that's what we were all told was the future.
Exactly. Upload everything, process everything remotely, and just blindly trust those invisible server farms humming away in a desert somewhere.
Yeah, you're essentially paying rent by the minute just to exist in that digital space.
Right. But what if I told you the landlords are basically packing up? Like, the cloud as we know it, as of today, June 1st, 2026, is officially on life support.
It's a really radical reversal. I mean, we are watching the massive centralization of the last decade just aggressively unravel right now.
The whole industry is pulling the plug. And, well, that is our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, you and I are stepping into the roles of forensic technology analysts and macroeconomic strategists. We are performing a holistic autopsy on today's news.
And there's a lot of news today.
Oh, there is. We are focusing on this massive architectural flip from cloud compute to local edge execution and the unprecedented sovereign capital grab it's triggering.
It's a huge collision of hardware and economics.
It really is. And before we start dissecting that collision, we should definitely thank AREA for powering the analytical frameworks we use to pull these insights together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their tools are honestly invaluable when you're trying to make sense of a market shifting this quickly. So let's just start with a 10,000-foot view. Why is the tech industry suddenly slamming the brakes on the cloud?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to physics and economics, specifically the brutal reality of cloud token expenses.
Okay, break that down for us.
So to understand this, you really have to look at how our use of AI has changed. Like a couple of years ago, you used a chatbot, right?
You type a prompt, you get a response.
Exactly. You ask a question, it gives an answer, and that costs a tiny fraction of a cent in cloud compute. But today, businesses aren't really using chatbots anymore. They are using autonomous AI agents.
Oh, right. An agent isn't just answering a single caller.
No, not at all.
You tell an agent, build me a new inventory management system, and it literally goes off and works on its own for 6 hours.
Yeah, it's writing code, it's testing it.
Finding an error, rewriting it.
Exactly. And every single one of those autonomous actions requires processing power in a remote data center. Every step burns tokens.
So it adds up fast.
Oh, incredibly fast. When you have thousands of agents running 24/7 across a massive enterprise, those token meters are just spinning out of control. It is completely financially unsustainable.
Wow.
And the second major bottleneck is corporate privacy.
Right, the data security aspect.
You just cannot have autonomous agents deeply integrated into your proprietary corporate workflows if every piece of sensitive financial data or source code has to be round-tripped to a third-party server.
The latency alone slows the agents down.
The latency is bad, but the security risk of data leaks is just totally unacceptable to a Fortune 500 board.
Which brings us to the actual hardware, right? The silicon layer. Because if the cloud is too expensive and way too risky, the compute has to happen locally.
It has to move to the edge.
Yes. And based on NVIDIA's Computex 2026 keynote today, they are fully weaponizing this shift.
Oh, they have essentially declared war on the by-86 processor legacy.
Right. So for those listening who might not be super deep into computer architecture, what exactly is the by-86 legacy? Like, why is NVIDIA attacking it so hard?
Well, the by-86 architecture is essentially the standard engine that's run almost every personal computer for the last 40 years.
It's the old reliable.
Yeah, but it was designed for a totally different era of computing. General-purpose tasks, running operating systems, handling spreadsheets.
Not AI.
Right. It wasn't built from the ground up for the massive parallel mathematical operations that modern AI requires. So NVIDIA is stepping in and explicitly stating, we are no longer just a graphics card company. We are building the entire computer from scratch.
And the centerpiece of that whole strategy is the launch of their Vera CPU.
Yes. NVIDIA engineered the Vera CPU specifically for those agentic workloads we were just talking about.
The tool use, writing code, all that autonomous stuff.
Exactly. Processing live data streams. Because it strips away all the baggage of legacy computing, NVIDIA claims the Vera architecture delivers 1.8 times faster throughput for AI agents than traditional by-86 CPUs.
Wait, 1.8 times? That is a massive generational leap in efficiency.
It's huge.
Okay, so that's the brain, but where it gets really interesting for you and me, like sitting at our desks, is the RTX Spark Superchip.
Yeah, that's the consumer play.
Because NVIDIA isn't just targeting giant enterprise servers anymore, they are bringing this directly to the consumer. They just unveiled the Superchip for Windows PCs.
Quite a piece of hardware.
It really is. It fuses a Blackwell GPU with a custom ARM-based N1X CPU designed by MediaTek. Plus, it's built on TSMC's 3-nanometer technology with 128 gigabytes of unified memory.
That is definitely a lot of buzzwords.
It is a lot of buzzwords. Unpack that unified memory piece for us, because that seems to be the linchpin of this whole thing.
Yeah, unified memory is the absolute secret weapon here. So in a traditional computer, your central processor, the CPU, and your graphics processor, the GPU, they have entirely separate memory pools.
Okay.
It's basically like having two chefs in a kitchen who have to constantly walk across the room to hand ingredients back and forth to each other.
Oh, I see.
Moving that data creates lag, which we call latency, and it burns a lot of battery power.
Right.
Unified memory means both processors share the exact same pool of data. There's no walking across the room.
They're working off the same cutting board.
Exactly. And when you're processing massive AI models locally, eliminating that data travel time is what makes edge compute actually viable.
And they are backing this up with serious manufacturing muscle. I mean, NVIDIA's Vera Rubin infrastructure platform, which powers all these new systems, is hitting full production right now.
Yes, across 350 factories.
In 30 countries.
It is a massive global deployment. They are just flooding the market with this new architecture.
And Microsoft is riding this wave perfectly. They coordinated with NVIDIA today to announce what the industry is already calling their Apple Silicon moment.
Yeah, the Surface Laptop Ultra.
They debuted the Surface Laptop Ultra. It's a beautiful machine. It has this gorgeous 15-inch mini LED screen. But the real story is that it's powered by this RTX Spark chip.
Right.
And here is the kicker. Microsoft says this laptop can run massive 120 billion parameter models completely locally.
Which is just wild to think about.
No internet connection required, no cloud token fees, just running on your lap.
To really put that in perspective, a 120 billion parameter model is roughly the size of the frontier AI models that, honestly, just a couple of years ago required a $100 million supercomputer facility to run.
And now it's in a backpack.
Placing that on a user's lap is absolutely staggering.
Think about your own laptop right now. If you're a business owner, for the last few years, you've essentially been forced to rent luxury penthouses, the cloud by the minute, just to house your AI.
And the rent was bankrupting you.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Microsoft and NVIDIA are offering you the chance to just buy a high-tech fortress outright. You pay once for the Surface Ultra, and you escape the rent entirely.
That is the core economic incentive right there. You cap your operational expenditure by shifting it to a one-time capital expenditure.
Right.
But there is a major caveat to buying the fortress. You are now responsible for the upkeep. If that local edge hardware becomes obsolete in 2 years because the models get even bigger, your capital expenditure suddenly turns into a very expensive paperweight.
That's a really fair point. But honestly, I have a bigger, more immediate question about the actual physics of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
We are talking about laptops that are incredibly thin. NVIDIA said the first batch from their partners will be as thin as 14 millimeter.
Yes, very slim profile.
I was half expecting NVIDIA to announce that the new laptop doubles as a panini press with that much compute.
Right, the sheet issue.
Yeah. Can a standard 14 millimeter thick laptop really dissipate the heat and handle the power demands of a 120 billion parameter model? I mean, are these things going to literally melt our desks?
It is a totally valid concern, and it really comes back to the manufacturing process we mentioned earlier, TSMC's 3-nanometer technology.
Okay, how does that solve the heat?
Well, to give you an idea of scale, a single strand of human hair is about 80,000 nanometers thick.
Wow. Okay.
We are talking about shrinking the transistors down to 3 nanometers. When the components are that microscopic, the physical distance the electrons have to travel is incredibly short.
And shorter distance means less resistance.
Exactly. And less resistance means significantly less heat generated per calculation.
That makes sense.
On top of that, because it uses an ARM-based architecture, which was originally designed for mobile phones, it is inherently vastly more power efficient than the legacy x86 instruction set.
So it runs cooler by design.
Right. So, while running a massive model will certainly spin up the laptop fans, the unified architecture and the 3-nanometer efficiency ensure it won't trigger a thermal shutdown or melt your desk.
All right, so that explains the digital edge. We've essentially put a supercomputer on your desk to avoid cloud fees.
Yes.
But if you're a manufacturer or an industrial engineer, your biggest problem isn't on a desk, it's out in the physical world. It's on the factory floor.
Absolutely.
How do you give a robot that same local intelligence without it constantly waiting for a server to tell it how to move its arm?
You build an entirely different kind of AI. And NVIDIA is laying the architectural groundwork for that with the announcement of Cosmos 3.
Cosmos 3.
Yes, this is what's called an open-weight world model.
Let's define that for the listeners. Open weight basically means the actual brain of the AI, like the underlying math and architecture, is available for developers to download, inspect, and tweak locally.
Right.
Rather than being locked behind a corporate API where you just blindly send prompts and hope for the best.
Correct. But what really makes Cosmos 3 a world model is how it was trained. It ingested 20 trillion multimodal tokens.
20 trillion, that's absurd.
It is. And multimodal means it wasn't just fed text documents. It was fed video, audio, and crucially, physical action data.
Action data, what does that actually look like in practice?
So most video generators we see today just predict what the next pixel in a two-dimensional frame should look like.
Right, they just make a pretty moving picture.
Exactly. They don't understand gravity or momentum. Cosmos 3 is predicting actual physics. It generates specific physical telemetry.
Like what?
Like robot joint angles, gripper trajectories, and exactly how much torque needs to be applied to a servo motor to lift a 10-pound object versus a 1-pound object.
Oh, wow. So if a robot drops a glass, traditional AI might just know what broken glass looks like visually.
Yeah.
But Cosmos 3 actually calculates the trajectory of the fall and the force of the impact.
Precisely. And that allows developers to simulate rare or incredibly dangerous collision scenarios safely in a digital environment. The robot basically learns how to react to a factory floor accident before it is ever physically built.
That is unbelievable. And the big news today is that NVIDIA noted an edge version of Cosmos 3 is coming soon.
Yes, the local physical edge.
Meaning a physical robot out in the world won't have to ask a remote cloud server how to balance or catch a falling object. It will compute the physics locally on board in real time.
Zero latency.
Which transitions perfectly into the biological edge, because we saw a massive regulatory breakthrough in China today that actually mirrors this exact same chip.
Yeah, the NEO chip.
Right. They approved the NEO chip, developed by Neurical Technology and Tsinghua University.
This is a landmark moment in neurotechnology. It is the first invasive brain-computer interface, or BCI, approved for use outside of clinical trials for paralyzed patients aged 18 to 60.
When most people think of a brain chip, they think of early designs like Neuralink, right? Which involved a surgical robot embedding microthreads directly into the brain tissue.
Right, cortical piercing.
But the clinical specs on the NEO chip are totally different. It uses a non-cortical piercing design. It sits right on the duramater.
Which is key.
Yeah, for those who aren't neurosurgeons, the duramater is essentially the tough, outermost protective membrane that surrounds your brain and spinal cord. It's almost like a thick skin over the brain.
That physical placement is vital. By sitting on top of the duramater instead of piercing the cortex, the NEO chip drastically lowers the risk of hemorrhage.
Makes sense.
It also prevents long-term glial scarring, which is basically the body's natural immune response trying to reject a foreign object.
Just much safer long term.
Exactly. It sacrifices a tiny bit of high-fidelity signal resolution, but it makes the safety profile robust enough for China to grant widespread regulatory approval.
And what it does with that signal is incredible. It translates the local brain compute, the raw neural waves happening right there under the skull, into physical movement, driving a soft robotic glove for the patient to use in daily life.
The mechanism is entirely self-contained.
Wait, I'm seeing a really interesting parallel here. With Cosmos 3, we have AI generating physical joint angles, so a silicon robot doesn't have to wait for a cloud server.
Okay, yeah.
And with the NEO chip, we have a device capturing raw brain waves to drive a robotic glove locally, right there on the patient's arm. Are these two wildly different fields basically using the exact same playbook?
The architectural mandate is completely identical.
Wow.
In both cases, latency is the ultimate enemy of the physical world. A factory robot navigating a complex environment cannot wait 200 milliseconds for a cloud server in another state to tell it how to maintain its balance.
Right, would just fall over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Similarly, human neurology operates in fractions of a millisecond. If you are paralyzed and trying to pick up a cup, you cannot round-trip a motor cortex signal to an external Wi-Fi server to tell the robotic glove to close its fingers.
The delay would make it unusable.
The compute must occur at the absolute edge, whether that edge is a 14-millimeter laptop chassis, a silicon robot, or the human duramater. The physical reality demands local execution.
Okay, so we've established that the technology is fleeing the cloud and decentralizing to the edge across the board.
Right.
But let's talk about the money. Because this explosion in high-performance local AI compute isn't just a technological marvel, it is generating an unprecedented concentration of wealth.
Oh, absolutely historic amounts of wealth.
And today, we are seeing the inevitable massive collision between these private AI markets and sovereign governments.
Yeah, to really understand the scale of the wealth here, we have to look at the Anthropic IPO filing today.
Yes.
They filed confidentially to go public, securing a private market valuation of $900 billion.
$900 billion. Let's just pause and let that number sink in for a second.
It's almost hard to comprehend.
That effectively upends the entire hierarchy. It blows right past OpenAI's $730 billion valuation tier. We are talking about a single private entity nearing $1 trillion valuation based largely on foundational AI models.
And when you have wealth accumulating at that scale and at that speed, sovereign entities, governments, inevitably react.
Right.
They look at a private company wielding more economic power than many nation-states, and they step in.
Which leads us to the explosive proposed legislation from Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yes, the American AI Sovereign Wealth Fund bill. In a New York Times op-ed today, Senator Sanders proposed a mandate to institute a 50% stock tax on major frontier AI entities.
Explicitly naming OpenAI, Anthropic, and xAI.
Right. The stated goal is to seize half of their corporate equity and distribute those shares directly to the public through a national sovereign wealth fund. Now, for you listening, whatever your politics are on wealth distribution, we're looking at this from a strictly macroeconomic perspective. Right, we're totally neutral on the politics of it.
Exactly. We're just looking at what this means for the market. And from a pure market analyst perspective, this is a massive macroeconomic curveball for these companies.
It's unprecedented. What's fascinating from a purely economic standpoint is the sheer mechanics of this proposal. This isn't a traditional corporate income tax on a company's profits.
Right. It's not a tax on revenue.
No, this is an equity tax. It is the literal state-sponsored nationalization of 50% of the underlying intellectual property and corporate ownership of these frontier labs.
And the irony noted in the bill itself is just staggering. Senator Sanders didn't just pull this idea out of thin air. He explicitly quoted past statements from the AI executives themselves to justify seizing their companies.
That is the real twist here.
Yeah.
He cited abstract musings from Elon Musk and Anthropic's own corporate blog.
Yep.
Over the past few years, these executives have frequently discussed the concepts of universal high income and the potential need for sovereign wealth funds to offset the societal disruption caused by their AI.
They were just musing philosophically on a blog, and a U.S. senator basically read it and said, great idea, hand over 50% of your shares.
Yeah, they accidentally gave the government the exact blueprint to nationalize them.
They really did. So purely clinically, as someone who watches market dynamics, let me push you on this.
Okay.
If Anthropic files for a $900 billion IPO, and simultaneously there is a highly credible bill proposing to seize half of that company, how does the global market even price in that level of risk?
It's incredibly difficult.
Like, does the threat of a 50% equity tax actually accelerate these companies' push toward the independent, edge-based hardware ecosystems we were just talking about with NVIDIA and Microsoft?
Oh, it accelerates it exponentially.
Okay.
I mean, how do you price in the risk of nationalization? The market prices it in by looking at physical vulnerabilities.
What do you mean by physical vulnerabilities?
Well, if your entire $900 billion valuation is predicated on massive centralized cloud data centers, giant physical buildings drawing gigawatts of power from the national grid, you are highly vulnerable to sovereign regulation.
Because the government knows exactly where you live. You can literally put a padlock on a data center. You can just cut off the power.
Exactly. A centralized asset is incredibly easy to seize or tax. But consider what happens if you transition your architecture entirely to the edge.
Okay.
If the actual intelligence, the processing power, and the models are distributed across 1 billion Surface Ultra laptops sitting in people's living rooms, millions of local robotic platforms on private factory floors, and locally integrated NEO chips in human patients.
You completely decentralize the asset.
You make the intelligence ambient.
Ambient infrastructure. I love that phrasing.
Yes, it becomes ambient infrastructure. It becomes significantly harder, legally and logistically, for any sovereign state to tax, regulate, or nationalize an asset that is physically distributed across the personal property of the global population.
So this architectural flip to local compute, this whole movement with the RTX Spark and Cosmos 3, it isn't just about saving money on cloud tokens or lowering latency for robots.
No, not at all.
It is a fundamental defensive strategy against state capture.
It is the ultimate decentralization of capital and compute. When the state tries to grab the cloud, the industry dissolves into the mist of the edge.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it.
Okay.
Let's pull all these threads together. Let's do the final autopsy summary of what we've dissected today.
Sure. So today's landscape shows us that the shift from cloud token dependency to local edge execution is effectively complete.
Driven by hardware.
Right, driven by architectural innovations like NVIDIA's RTX Spark Superchip, the Cosmos 3 World Model for robotics, and the NEO BCI for human biology. Technological power is moving out of the centralized data center and directly into the local physical environment.
But it's causing friction.
Massive friction. This shift is triggering historical wealth accumulation, as we saw with Anthropic's $900 billion IPO filing. And that unprecedented private wealth is provoking aggressive sovereign pushback, evidenced by the proposed 50% equity tax.
So the battle lines are drawn.
The tension between distributed edge autonomy and centralized sovereign control is officially the defining macroeconomic battle of this new era.
Which leaves us with a lingering forward-looking question based on everything we've looked at today.
Let's hear it.
If NVIDIA and Microsoft are succeeding in making incredibly powerful AI run entirely on local edge hardware without needing the cloud, will the towering $900 billion valuations of cloud-reliant model makers like Anthropic actually hold up in the public market?
That is the trillion-dollar question.
Or are politicians and investors trying to tax and buy into the giants of an era that is already architecturally obsolete? We started this deep dive by looking at the cloud paradigm lying on life support. The real question now is whether the market realizes the patient has already flatlined.
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this forensic exploration. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
That concludes our daily forensic briefing for June 1st, 2026. The strategic signal for today is the migration to physical and local infrastructure. As enterprise token spend causes structural distress across balance sheets, the clear solution is the edge. NVIDIA's new chips and Microsoft's Surface Ultra prove that high-leverage workflows are moving directly onto local devices. Simultaneously, startups like Mecha and MicroAgi are bypassing text scraping to capture raw physical human data directly from real-world spaces. Capital is separating itself from internet-level abstractions and anchoring to physical hardware, proprietary local datasets, and legal boundaries. We thank our sponsor, AIREA, for supporting this broadcast. If you want to take back control of your infrastructure, check the show notes for our curated AI executive toolkit. As always, we have exclusive discount codes for Google Workspace and my AI and Machine Learning Tutor Pro apps listed below. Subscribe to the Jamga Mind channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads. We build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.